we're going to explain how to resolve the no-being-named entityManagerFactory available error in Spring Boot JPA. This error typically means Spring Boot can't find the necessary configuration to create the entityManagerFactory, which is the core component for interacting with your database using JPA. Let's troubleshoot this step by step. 1. Verify JPA dependencies. First, ensure you have the correct JPA and database driver dependencies in your right single quote pom.xml right single quote for Maven, or right single quote build.gradle right single quote for Gradle. You'll need Spring Data JPA, a JPA implementation, like Hibernate, and a JDBC driver for your specific database, for example, MySQL, PostgreSQL. Double-check versions for compatibility. A missing or incorrect version is the most frequent cause. 2. Check right single quote application.properties, right single quote or right single quote application.yml. Your configuration file needs to specify the database connection details. This includes the database URL, username, password, and dialect, which tells JPA how to communicate with your specific database. Common mistakes include typos in property names or incorrect values. Ensure you've correctly defined right single quote spring.datasource.url right single quote comma right single quote spring.datasource.username right single quote comma right single quote spring.datasource.password right single quote comma and right single quote spring.jpa.database-platform right single quote the dialect. Example for MySQL, Spring, datasource.url, JDBC, MySQL, localhost, 3306 my database. 3. Entity classes and @entity annotation. Make sure your entity classes, the Java classes representing your database tables, are correctly annotated with @entity. They should also have a primary key defined using @id. If these annotations are missing or incorrect, Spring won't recognize them as JPA entities. 4. @Spring Boot application annotation. Ensure your main application class has the @Spring Boot application annotation. This annotation enables Spring Boot's auto-configuration, which is essential for setting up the entityManagerFactory. 5. Spring Data JPA repository. Interfaces. If you're using Spring Data JPA repositories, verify that they extend the correct interface, for example, JPA repository, CRUD repository. Incorrect or missing repository interfaces can indirectly impact the entityManagerFactory creation. 6. Check for conflicts. Sometimes multiple JPA configurations or conflicting dependencies can lead to this error. Carefully review all your dependencies and configuration files to identify and resolve any conflicts. Look for multiple JPA implementations or different versions of the same library.
7. Rebuild and restart. After making any changes to your configuration or dependencies, make sure to rebuild your project and restart your Spring Boot application to ensure the changes are fully applied.
8. Enable auto-configuration. If you're overriding a lot of configuration manually, ensure you're not unintentionally disabling auto-configuration that's crucial for JPA setup. Check for annotations or properties that might be interfering. 9. Examine logs. The Spring Boot logs usually provide detailed information about the startup process and any errors encountered. Look for clues in the log files to pinpoint the exact cause of the issue. Examine the stack trace carefully for further details. 10. Clean and re-import project. In some IDEs, a clean build and re-import of your project can resolve issues related to dependency management or cached build artifacts. This should be a last resort if none of the above help. By systematically addressing these points, you should be able to resolve the no-being-named entityManagerFactory available error in your Spring Boot JPA application. Remember to always check your logs for more specific error messages and stack traces to aid debugging.